Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. This is our Baku Grand Prix race review. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. On a weekend that started out like a firework laced with chili sauce and hedonism, but ended up like a cake covered in a porridge-soaked towel, we'll ask, is Verstappen back in the title fight? Yes, he is, and frankly, he is now my pick, and I am fully behind Verstappen's fifth title in 2025. That is the result I want because, frankly, he is the only driver on the grid driving like a world champion. Also, we'll talk about Russell fighting through what looked like a pretty bad illness to emerge in a glorious P2, a truly stunning performance from George Russell, and, of course, that podium. Vamos! Carlos Sainz rode a unicorn over a rainbow to claim Williams' first podium since 1866 and will also reluctantly reflect on an embarrassing weekend for Ferrari. We are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind support of our patrons and partners. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. And we're joined in the shed by F1 tech expert and expert at playing the easiest instrument in any band. It's Matt Trumpets. Hello, Matt.
I'm surprised you didn't go with, speaking of 1866, here's Trumpets.
Someone who was born just before that. You're not that old. It's fine.
No, I'm not really that old. I just feel like it about every other day.
Are you old enough to remember the previous Williams podiums? Because Carlos Sainz did make a comment before the race going, I'm just really keen to get Williams their first podium. And I'm sure everyone's looking at the TV going, oh, Carlos, never mind.
Yeah, I think he meant in this regulatory era. Yeah, I remember the Bottas podiums. And of course, I'm old enough to remember Mario Andretti winning a world championship. So, yeah, I have a history there.
Yeah, you said Nigel Mansell wrong, but okay, that's fine. And we're also joined, following up her appearance on the preview show, it's presenter and sports car reporter, Antonia Rankin. Hello, Antonia.
Hey, I feel like qualifying ruined the race a little bit. Everyone learned their lessons way too effectively.
Well, okay, there's that, but also, can we argue about the fact that in the preview, I correctly pointed out that apart from the pretty castle and the long straight, it's a pretty bad track and you need a well-timed safety car to make it interesting. That race fell flat.
Only if you weren't watching it well.
Oh, really? Did I watch it wrong? Yeah. Is that what you're gaslighting me into? Yeah. I watched the race wrong. That's why it was boring.
I mean, a new champion has potentially been given an opportunity. Yeah. Strategy errors, timing errors. Yeah, I thought it was quite a good race.
Okay, I'll take interesting weekend. I'll take interesting storylines emerging. I'll take great performances coming out in a sporting way.
Wrong.
No, but come on. Like, the first few laps were great, and then it Baku'd. It does what Baku does roughly half the time.
Are you aware of, most races and how they work? If just because someone's not crashing all the time doesn't mean it's a boring race.
Oh my God, did she just hit me? She just hit me with bros only here for the crashes. Oh my God.
Yeah, she did. Absolutely. No, I think it wound up being very interesting because there was a real lack of certainty about which order to put your tires on in. To go with the hard first or to go with the medium first. And there was a nice distribution across the grid and between teams and between teammates so that you could look and see which one was the optimal strategy today. So I did enjoy it from that point of view. But if you're talking about why this particular race didn't bang, it's not the track. It's the DRS zone was too short. That's what they messed up. And in the old days, and I remember I've talked about it with SummerSlam, they used to actually tune that across the weekend to get it to a very specific place. Yeah. And I think they've kind of given up on that. And and it's a shame because really with a slightly longer DRS zone, we would have seen a much more fascinating race play out, I think.
Obviously, there was interesting things. And you did need a little bit of patience and you're watching it unfold and you go, right, when are you going to use your one weapon? And this is what it came down to because the tyres, what tyres were they, Matt? Were they the softest possible tyres or?
They were the 456.
456. So, so even with the softest possible tyres, it just had no effect on strategy. So there was no tyre wear at all. Tsunoda came out with a comment that there was zero tyre wear.
I'm not sure that's true for everyone that I looked at, but fundamentally you had a lot of people talking about like negative DAG, especially on the hard tire. So yeah, there was very little. And certainly if you were both on the same tire, it was almost none.
Yeah, well, as we spoke about at the start of the weekend, the asphalt abrasion level at Baku is incredibly low. So the graining stages that we normally see in tyres, like we've seen in the last couple of years, have been completely different. Not also that, but the way that teams manage their tyres this year, I would say has actually been on average pretty good. So I don't think we were going in really expecting tyres to be the main point of strategy. Whereas as we saw it play out, it came down to the timings of the pit stops, the ability of the drivers, the ability of the pit stops to be fast. You know, you don't go into Baku expecting tyre gates to happen again.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this like at a slightly different time of year for Baku? Like the temperature was a lot. We didn't have hot temperatures, and we did have the crazy wind yesterday that made things very interesting that kind of departed, unfortunately, for today.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting actually seeing that schedule change, because I think Baku, it used to be a double header with Monaco, didn't it? It used to be like my two favorite street circuits together. So that would have been May. So a completely different time of year. And I loved how the wind came into it actually, because as we were talking about in the preview show, dirty air is a huge thing. The slipstream has a huge impact. And that's why Verstappen managed to pull ahead as well as he did, because he had the clean air. And he wouldn't have been so impacted where if you were in dirty air like Piastri with a headwind XYZ and you literally cannot get any life into the car.
Yeah, so it did cover a lot of qualifying in my little qualifying review, Matt, before we get pulled down that alley. One more thing from you, and then I think I want to talk about Max.
All right. Oh, you mentioned Piastri. I'm like, wait, was he even in the race?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned qualifying. I think that's what I'm saying. I think Antonia was talking about qualifying performances there a little bit.
Oh no, he said after lap one, he said he got completely caught up in the dirty air, as well as a million things he also did wrong, and that's part of the reason why he just completely lost the car.
I tell you who didn't do anything wrong, and that is the quite incredible Max Verstappen. Yeah, I'm nothing but full of praise for Max Verstappen this weekend. On our qualifying review, I talked about why I thought he was head and shoulders above everybody else in that qualifying session, because as a sportsman, as well as a race car driver, he understood what was required when everyone around him was losing their heads. And now, after this performance today, and after watching what the McLaren drivers have done with their opportunities this weekend and over the course of the season, I think I am backing Max Verstappen to get his 5th world title. I'm gunning for it. I'm hoping for it, because he is the only driver at the moment that is demonstrating that they can drive like a world champion. And that's how I want to see championships decided. And I know I got sucked down the Norris path for a lot of this season, because yes, I put out a TikTok saying, why have they signed Piastri out, so quickly and got his contract sorted so quickly? And then a bunch of Australians yelled at me, and instead of taking a nuanced approach, I went, oh yeah, and doubled down against Piastri for the rest of the season. But honestly, I am watching these McLaren drivers underperforming, and they are. Norris has lost so many opportunities this year, has thrown away so many points this year. Piastri, when his teammate has got it together, fair enough, when his teammate hadn't got it together, he's picked up results. But in the last 6 or 7 races, he's been dominated. He has been the second best driver in that team. And I just think there's about a dozen other drivers I can think about from the last 10 years that I would put in one of those McLaren seats and would be dominating this world championship. And I think now, after these 2 wins and the second place before that, Max Verstappen is in a mathematically decent position to go and take the title fight to both these McLaren drivers.
If he has the car to go with it, which has always been the problem. I think you're looking at 2 very favorable tracks to Red Bull, seeing Max drive as he always does and saying, oh, that's it, he's going to win. And let's remember, these tracks that are very favorable to the Red Bull are distinctly unfavorable to the McLarens. You talk about Norris making a lot of mistakes. Aside from giving up the place to Leclerc, which in the end I don't think mattered at all, he drove a perfectly fine race today. McLaren, the team, couldn't solve their car for this track very effectively. I think that's what we're really talking about.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was masked today, McLaren maybe not having the correct setup, whereas Red Bull completely nailed it. Because, of course, how would we be able to tell how well McLaren had nailed it with one driver in the wall at lap 1 and then a messed up pit stop for Lando? I think there was a lot of things that really just didn't fall into place for them this weekend. Lando called it a mistake in the pit stops. It's one of those things you have to account for it. A pit stop's not always going to be bang on 2 seconds. Yes, those extra 2 did completely cost him. I wouldn't say he drove his best today, but that's not what makes a champion. And Verstappen, of course, when given the car, when given the resources, is always going to run off into the distance because he's one of the most exceptional drivers on the grid. And turning around and going, okay, well, that's it, he's going to win then, I think is silly. Completely silly.
Well, then let me be silly a little longer. One of my conclusions from the qualifying is that it was non-ideal conditions. So a lot of these drivers are used to running around with high downforce, really grippy tyres on perfect racetracks designed for racing, and they can push and with runoff as well, a lot of runoff area, and they used to be able to push for the maximum lap time. When you add in that there was walls, when you add in that there was wind that was changing all the time, when they didn't have the downforce levels to give them grip, and Verstappen is a driver who is probably the best at, if you rip the wings off, Verstappen probably does better than the rest of the grid, but you couldn't push 100% in qualifying, and none of the other drivers seemed to realise that. And there was about 10 drivers in the wall. Norris didn't just pick up just a semi-decent lap time. He was massively overdriving it. And honestly, on Saturday, Verstappen made the rest of the grid look like rookies, and then he cruised home to the victory that he won today.
I don't want to brag, but I called this in qualifying.
Go on then.
We saw drivers completely overdo it, heat up the rear tyres way too much, smack into a wall because they lost all control of the car, not conceptualizing that maybe they needed to brake just a little bit sooner. Yeah. And it's a rookie error. I think you have to call it what it is for that many drivers to be slamming the car into the wall, to have 6 red flags. You can say that the conditions are difficult, but that's why you're in Formula One. You're one of the best 20, well, in theory, one of the best 20 drivers in the world. And errors like that, you need to be able to read the car, know the conditions, and then put together a good lap.
Often, like, you'll watch top sport and say, you'll watch someone playing at the Bernabeu or Wembley Stadium, and the grass is flat, and they're playing these passes that roll along the ground like a snooker table. And you're like, okay, but could you do that at Shrub End playing field, where there's bobbled, where there's moles and everything like that? And I always kind of go, yeah, come to our turf, and you wouldn't be able to do that. And I think a lot of these drivers, if you put them in like club series with karts that are like, some of the chassis are bent, and the curbs are ridiculous, and the wind whips in. Yeah, I think they might struggle, except I don't think Verstappen would struggle. And I think that is what's separating him from the field right now.
Well, I just want to get in with, I could be wrong, but have we ever seen a qualifying where you would occasionally pick up like a 60-kilometer-an-hour tailwind into a turn and that would suddenly have the effect of downforce you had to brake with? I mean, I think the unpredictable is fair. Max clearly did the best out of all of them. But I don't think we see these conditions often enough for anyone to really be adjusted to them.
Sure, but, Verstappen went quite gently through that turn 16, the one with the runoff area a little bit. He went quite gently through that because he realised job was done. So, like, my final thing on this really will be, Leclerc had the same chance to make that percentage call, hit the wall. So did Piastri. Hit the wall in qualifying, did a false start. That was his little brake magic moment, wasn't it? And then hit the wall later on trying to make up for it. Norris overdrove it. So all the people who had a chance, the 5 cars that had a chance of going and grabbing pole, got it wrong in a sportsman way, and Verstappen didn't get it wrong. So I think, go on, mate.
Oh, well, if you're going to say that, you got to mention Sainz too then, because I think he did a pretty good job as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to Sainz. But I want to cover the top few. So this kind of battle for the championship now that is forming. I do think it's between 3 drivers. So the gap to the gap from Piastri to Verstappen is 69 points. Okay, so that is less than 3 race wins. And if you want to do some maths, if it was P1 Verstappen, P2 Piastri for the rest of the season, then Piastri would win. But when you start mixing that in with, say, Norris and Piastri sharing the P2s, Verstappen has it in his hands. I think Verstappen can go and win every single race. If he wins every single race and the 3 sprint races, which Verstappen and Red Bull have done before, I think mathematically it is still kind of in Red Bull and Verstappen's hands a little to go fighting.
I understand that it's an exciting prospect to have another car finally back in the running semi-realistically for a championship. But that's exactly my issue. It's only semi-realistic. And I think with knowledge of how the rest of the season has gone, realistically, we know that Max is probably not going to win the championship. And that's in no way an insult to him or his ability. McLaren have had the better car all year. So even if they only drive okay, and Max does an exceptional job every race weekend following, with maybe a couple of wins left in him for the rest of the season, he is absolutely fantastic, but they're not in the same car. And that is not the only factor here.
I think someone's saying that I said it was 2 race wins. Obviously, that is 50 points. I thought I said a few race wins. I'll correct myself then. It's only a few race wins, isn't it? But also, what it means is if he starts racking up wins throughout the season, it puts pressure on McLaren. And so there's obviously no guarantee that they're going to finish P2 and P3. Because as we correctly predicted a few races ago, Matt, remember when we were so confident? McLaren 1-2s from here to Abu Dhabi? Got that wrong.
Sure. Yeah. No. But that was before Red Bull brought the Monza update. So, you can only make decisions based on the current information. I still think there are about 4 tracks where they might be seriously in it for a win. There's in Mexico, Vegas, Brazil, and maybe Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Beyond that, we really just got to see what they bring to Singapore, because their bogey tracks have been very bogey tracks. And we're walking back into a McLaren wheelhouse. And at 7 race weekends, that's 10 points per weekend for him to catch and beat Piastri. It's not just him winning. It's Piastri suddenly not finishing 3 or 4 races in a row. And I just find that to be less probable.
I don't think it has to be like that. He doesn't have to lose all the points all in a row. I will do a counterpoint. How much confidence have you got in McLaren at the moment to A, pull off pit stops? Because Lando Norris says, I'm getting to the point where it feels like more than just a mistake. So a little bit of paranoia creeping in there. The Mercedes power unit, as we know, the F1 gods owe Lando Norris 1 power unit failure for Piastri, so he'll have at least 1 there. The drivers themselves are racking up errors that Verstappen isn't making. So Piastri, apart from this weekend, he's also had, he lost a win with the weird brake check thing under the safety car. There was another race critical moment that I can remember in Australia. They both went off, yes, but he picked a longer path off and went off the other end as well, and nearly wasn't able to restart. Norris has messed up many Q3 sessions. That horrible overtake attempt in Canada. Is it so unrealistic that McLaren are going to keep throwing away points while Verstappen keeps delivering?
Yes. I think a driver like Piastri is incredibly level-headed and will approach Singapore in a very reasonable way. I know that's the boring thing to say. I'll be the boring one. It's okay.
Oh, man. If he crashes, I'm going to do a TikTok with you saying that and then the crash. Come on. Now I want a safe crash just for that reason.
I think exactly like Matt said, you're not just relying on Max to be a great driver, because you can rely on that. You're relying on a driver like Piastri and Lando having pretty bad weekends for almost the rest of the year. And I agree, Lando has been historically this season incredibly inconsistent and nowhere near as reliable as Piastri. But that's the thing, Piastri has done a fantastic job, and he has the car, he himself is a good driver, and he'll want it badly. Let's not forget the importance that this will hold for him. He wants to win a world championship.
And see, this is what, I know we want to talk about Max. We want to talk about Max for the win.
Okay.
We want to have a championship between teams. But to me, what's very interesting right now is that we are wandering into a portion of the season where the tracks that are McLaren tracks are looking like they're favoring Norris a bit more than Piastri. And I'm just going to take you back to that update they introduced at Canada that Norris liked and Piastri didn't. And when we get to this end of the calendar, where Norris has an advantage, are we beginning to see that play out? Because if we're talking about Norris to Piastri, what's that, like 3.5 points a race weekend? Suddenly we're in a much more interesting window. And we've not seen Piastri. We did see Lando last year a little bit. It wasn't very believable, but at least maybe he believed it. We've not seen Piastri anywhere near a world championship yet. So I think there are still some questions to be answered, but I think it's more between the McLaren teammates.
Okay, so just a quick one on that. Like, apart from Spa and apart from the engine blow up, so the Spa was Norris qualified on pole, but just everyone gets skinned down the Kimmel Straight into Le Combe. But apart from that, like, Norris has been, comfortably ahead in the P1, P2s, yeah? So if the next 4 races was to go like that, then Norris takes the championship lead with 3 races to go. Just a bit of perspective on that.
So, but then I suppose the question would be not who is faster out of Piastri and Lando, but how McLaren are going to play their cards with team orders or papaya orders. It's not been handled well, in my opinion, for the rest of the season. I think they could have completely streamlined their approach to give Piastri a considerably better result than he's having at the moment. That's not my decision.
You're in the favouring Norris camp.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. I mean, Piastri's leading. He could have been leading by a bigger margin if McLaren had decided up front that he would be the first driver.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's not between the two of them who can scrappily pull something together. McLaren need to pull their weight now as the overseers of their drivers in how these race outcomes actually add up to a championship. Because like you said, it's getting relatively tight now with a few races left.
I think in any sane team, you really should have a clear number one. So these situations are a headache for the team that almost feel unnecessary. So you have your Schumacher era, you have your Verstappen era. Mercedes could have not got Hamilton. They could have had De Resta instead and just had a Rosberg era. There's a world where they had De Resta there. And then Rosberg was just their number one driver, and Rosberg is now a 5-6-time world champion. There's a world where that happens. But no, they had just like 3 years of absolute heartbreak and misery with the two drivers and pleased no one. And McLaren seemed to be going down that same route. But I do feel like I just need to clarify that I'm just talking about the drivers this season. So this season, I'm not feeling like the McLaren drivers feel like they're driving like world champions. I'm not seeing a world champions drive. That doesn't mean in the future they're not going to tip up one season. It doesn't mean in the future we're not going to have a Piastri-led Aston Martin team that dominates for 18 years and he becomes the greatest ever world champion. I'm talking about this season. Look at the results. Are either fan base genuinely happy with how their driver has done? Piastri fans, Norris fans, are you genuinely happy with how your driver has performed this season? Beyond just wanting them to win, are you satisfied?
If Oscar, and I will die on this hill, if Oscar had the outgoing personality that Lando had, people would support him and see what he is more, which is a championship potential driver.
He
has been excellent. And I don't think we can say, well, that's not a championship winning performance, because if it wins him the championship, which at the moment it is, then he is a world championship.
I appreciate that anybody who wins the world championship did by definition do the performance required to be a world champion. I accept.
I don't think any of the drivers particularly have been incredibly jaw-dropping this season because of how close it's been, because of how up and down the performances of the actual cars have been. If you look at Verstappen, he hasn't been a championship winning driver because the car's not been fast enough. What makes a championship winner? A good car as well. There's so much that comes into play. And I honestly think if Piastri had a more outgoing, a more extroverted, personality, people would support him a lot more and see him for the exceptional driver that he is.
It's Hunger Games though, isn't it? So at some point he needs to go on a chariot in a dress that looks like it's on fire. And then... Have you not seen the Hunger Games?
No, I have, but I just feel like this weekend the car has looked like it's on fire. He's had his burning, horrible moment. Now he gets to build it back up from the ashes, come back stronger, and I genuinely think he will.
Well, I think in a way, Piastri has won a PR battle in a way, because his lack of showing his personality, that's very different to a lack of personality, has been turned into a strength in the same way that Kimi Räikkönen, it was, Kimi Räikkönen was like, pretty grumpy, obnoxious, drunk, and everyone was like, oh, Uncle Kimi, he's so funny, because he'd say nothing and then just yell or whatever, or say something rude. So I think Piastri was kind of getting that Iceman PR, and I think he'll still get that. Right, okay, so felt a bit emotional. That, but I like seeing Verstappen in this title fight, because apart from Austria, is Austria where he deliberately drove into George Russell? It was Austria, wasn't it? Apart from that, I'm really struggling to think of a bad performance from Verstappen. The caveat is Barcelona. What did he? Oh, is that where he hit Russell?
Russell.
Yeah.
Took me a minute. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. And then we did better than me. And so I'm struggling to think of, a weekend where he didn't turn up and maximise results. I can think of plenty of weekends where he seemed like he was nowhere, and then suddenly he's popping up and qualifying P1, P2.
But that's because he has exceptional racecraft, and you can have a fast car and not know how to drive it. I don't know what the situation is with Tsunoda, but the fact that we're celebrating a P6 from him this weekend feels a bit dystopian. I really don't think Verstappen has been that thrilling this season. He's outperformed our expectations, and therefore we celebrate his performances because we go, wow, that actually was pretty good. But the car hasn't been there for him. He hasn't been on the podium winning consistently like he has been in the past.
Yeah, and Toby is saying Silverstone was another example of him not doing great. And also, I think the big caveat that I always want to keep in mind is that we don't see Verstappen against a teammate in equal machinery. We just have not seen that. So we don't get a true, right. He could be out driving the car. Also, equally, he could have a car that's just like 110% beyond the grid, and he's about the same as all the other top drivers. So, we don't know. And I think we're unlikely to see Verstappen head-to-head in equal cars with anyone anytime soon.
Well, this is why I like that Singapore is next, because they've brought this update. The update has brought performance. Max has been able to win races now, suddenly again with it. But it's really, Singapore is a track that is the opposite of everything the Red Bull is, just say, naturally good at, for lack of a better way to put it. So seeing if they're able to improve their worst performances on their worst tracks is really something that I am looking forward to. And I just want to share a little bit, because I did hear a lovely interview with Tsunoda after the race. He said that he actually found something in Max's data that he was able to use in his training sessions to improve his performance today. And it sounds like he's not trying to set his car up like Max anymore, that the team is actually looking at him and what he needs and choosing from their bin of parts to try and give it to him. So this seems like maybe a work in progress. We might see some steps from Tsunoda as well before the end of the season.
Well, yeah, like about time. You can only do the same thing for so many years before you start going, okay, where is actually the weaknesses of this particular driver with this car? And start making meaningful changes to finally get Tsunoda in the mix. Now, I know there's whispers about Isaac Hadjar, which would be a shame to, have him have a step down. But you have to look at what's happening at Red Bull. And Red Bull are a well-established, historically championship-winning team. And it's been incredibly frustrating, even as I wouldn't call myself a diehard Red Bull fan, but they are not in any way at their full of their potential, and they're making the same mistakes every single year. Again, that's why we're celebrating a Tsunoda P6 today. In an ideal world, should this not have been a Red Bull 1-2? McLaren's out of the way. Lando had a difficult race. If Max is on the front row, Tsunoda should be with him, and I'm a bit bored of celebrating mediocrity.
As a Tsunoda fan, I'm not celebrating today because obviously qualifying was chaotic, which opened up opportunities for people to go further, and if you kept it on track and you didn't crash, the thing that I'm looking at is race pace. So, as a Hamilton fan, the result was rubbish, but I'm looking at the race pace and I'm going, it's pretty decent actually. There was some good stints there. Don't worry, we'll get to the depressing Ferrari stuff. I look at Tsunoda's race pace today and you go, oof, it was more than a second off. It was like a good chunk more than a second off in clean air, and you go, he's nowhere near. He is there purely on the dint of there was the cars in between that should have been there, took themselves out and are unable to get past Lawson, the moving barrier. So as a Tsunoda fan, absolutely no optimism about that result today. I could superficially go and say, yeah, P6, yeah, shove it, haters, but I'm not feeling that. Matt, you look poised like you're going to say.
I feel like he had a better race than that. I mean, did he not get into some battling with some Ferraris and stuff like that? The mystery to me, and I always, this bothers me a lot, to come do a show and not know the answer to everything I had a question about. But when I looked at his pit stop gap to Lawson, he should have been out in front of him, and he wasn't. And I really don't know why, because it didn't sound like there was anything particularly wrong with the pit stop itself. So I'm a little confused by that. And then I think Lawson constrained his pace in that whole second stint. So, no one could pass anybody because the DRS zone was too short down the straight. Hello, I've already said that once. And sorry, I'll probably say it 5 or 10 more times before the show is over. So we didn't get a full picture of what potential he brought to this race, but he clearly brought an improvement, and that's what I like.
There's a meme going around about George Russell where it's a picture of his face normally, or his kit, but normally with like Woody from Toy Story, which I think is cruel, but funny. And it says, basically, George Russell does nothing, P3. And I saw people today saying, George Russell does nothing, P2. But I felt like that was horrendously unfair. It looked like he was relentlessly putting in lap times to grind his way up the order all the way to P2. The caveat that I would put to kind of ruin it, because people go, oh, you hate George Russell, you always have to put him down. Okay, so here's how I'm going to put him down. So these were ideal George Russell conditions. So the things that I think he seems to struggle with, which is, say, temperature management or general management, tyre wear, that kind of stuff. Today, there was no tyre wear. It was nice and cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some drivers are good on certain types of circuits. Some drivers are good on certain types of conditions. These were George Russell conditions. And also, once he took his helmet off, he looked appalling. I believe that the virus or whatever bug he had was bad. He looked ill, and he went into that race with enthusiasm, with optimism, delivered, politic to get his teammate pitted out of his way. I think this was an absolutely outstanding Russell performance.
Yeah, it's been a difficult year for Mercedes, and I think it's been a lot of quote unquote nothing performances for them this year. They've been kind of caught at an awkward position in the championship, and I'm hoping that with a bit more wind tunnel testing time and a bit more budget to play with after an mediocre season this year compared to their competitors, they'll be able to make a bit of a spring forward. But this is exactly the thing. They did have a bit of an uneventful race, but just because it was uneventful, it doesn't mean that George wasn't doing an exceptional job. And I think there were some great strategic decisions by the team to benefit both of the drivers.
But really, benefit both of them?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, because Antonelli really needed that pit stop right then.
I don't think Antonelli was performing well. He needed to be brought out of the way, and that's what they did. I think he would have had a really difficult time, and he wasn't putting in good sectors. He wasn't doing any great battles either. He wasn't making any ground.
Okay, I'm confused here. Zantinelli started on a medium tire. He passed George Russell.
Oh, kind of. That was funny.
Russell, I think, actually, if you want to talk about where Russell won the race, where it was won and lost, him backing out of that move was one of the smartest things I've seen him do. But I want to carry on a little bit.
Because... Yeah, but you're talking about the incident now. I feel like we've got to dwell on it.
All right, well, fine. But you just got to bring me back to talking about why Antonelli pitted when he did. So let's talk about it.
Okay. So Russell was the grown-up in that situation, and Antonelli was rush of blood. I'm going to go down the inside. I don't think that Russell was thinking about Antonelli. There was another car. There was one of the V-Carbs was in front. So I think Lawson was there as well in the middle. But Lawson was gone by the time they got to the exit of turn one. I just want to point out technically, even though, Russell's sensible, don't take out your teammate, Antonelli definitely left enough room. Absolutely left enough room for Russell to be there.
Yeah, he might have been having Singapore flashbacks, Russell.
Yeah, but also, how much do you want to gamble on Antonelli succeeding and leaving you exactly that amount of room to go to the wall. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're Russell, you might go back and argue, look, he's not having the best season. I was the best driver. I had the best pace. I was our best chance of going and getting a win even. We should be telling Antonelli, hey, don't send it up the inside of me right now. Not until you're a bit more established.
I mean, he was subliminally trying to do so throughout the race anyway, over the radio with like, I think I have the tire advantage here, guys. I think I can take him. Meanwhile, he's sat nicely parked behind Antonelli.
Yeah.
I think you have to trust your teammate in scenarios like this. I understand there's hesitation because Antonelli is a rookie, but I'm sure in that position, Russell has to just lock in and say, okay, he's my teammate. He's not going to take me out. I don't agree with what he's doing, but I think I'm just going to keep it clean. You know, like, especially between a team like that where they're not Rosberg and Hamiltoning at the moment, you know? I think there has to be a certain level of trust in keeping it cool. And again, that's what George did well today. He got a great result.
Could we argue that Antonelli's overtake was quite like aggressive on your teammate and it basically forced Russell to make the sensible decision to back out?
Is that not why George has the position he has at Williams, though? George is Mr. Mercedes at the moment, right? He came into the team not that long ago, right? But with a driver as inexperienced as Antonelli, and that's not to his detriment. He needs to be the level-headed, mature, good for the team one. And I think he's done exactly that. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say at all.
So my memory of this incident is maybe entirely different than everybody else's, but I was pretty sure that Antonelli was glued to Lawson's gearbox. And Lawson had the inside of that corner, and Antonelli just followed him through. That's what I remember.
No, there was sort of either side of Lawson in a way, and I think Antonelli will probably say, "Well, I was trying to overtake Lawson, didn't really clock that Russell was there." But yeah, an interesting dynamic. I just think that situation didn't need to be that different for it to be an issue, and I just wonder at this stage in the season if you're Mercedes and you really want results. I think you might have to say, look, if you're on track together, well done, Kimi, for getting up there, but let's not mess with George's race because it is, look at this data. Every single race, George Russell has the race pace over you right now. Matt, then Antonia.
And this is the other thing I want to address, like the tire advantage thing. I had the exact same visceral reaction. I'm like, oh, come on, George. But then I looked at it and I realized that he did have the need because he was on the hard tire going long. He couldn't afford to waste time behind Antonelli, who was on a brand new fresh set of hard tires because they were on different tire strategies. George was actually right about that. And that's why he wound up doing so much better because he was on the optimal tire strategy today.
Justin in our Patreon Discord just said, I mean, if you were next to Antonelli and Lawson going into T1 in Azerbaijan, wouldn't you back out? It's a very fair point.
This is the thing. I think it just takes a little bit of common sense in a situation like this. Like I said, out of the two, George has the experience level head, right? He should have analysed that situation a bit better so as not to lose so much from it. But also, let's give them a bit of grace. How often Mercedes this season have they been in a position to go, right, you're fighting for position, move over, team orders, XYZ? It's probably not something that they've talked about very much.
No, it hasn't been on the radar.
They haven't both been up there.
Yeah, and I think it's quite sort of on point for Mercedes to go, oh no, we magically need this pit stop right now. Like, that's definitely inventing. I'm not saying stop inventing. I approve. That's good. But I do not think that was the optimal time, coincidentally, for Antonelli to pit. Did work out for Mercedes in another way, though, because I think Lawson then pitted to cover that off. So, yeah, all round, it was good tactics from Mercedes. Yeah, Matt.
So thank you for bringing back the pit stops. It was absolutely right in the middle of the predicted pit stop window for the medium tire. And he was close enough to potentially have an undercut on Lawson. So it was absolutely bog standard tactics for Mercedes to do what they did because he was clearly not going to be able to pass him.
Oh, really, Matt? Okay, if you end up with a paddock pass from Mercedes, I'm going to be very, very suspicious. From a psychological point of view, though, George Russell, he pulls up behind that battle between Lawson and Antonelli and starts going on the radio going, I've got the better tyre strategy. Between you and me, I think Antonelli's weaving all over the place. I think he's going to get a puncture anyway. You should let me through. After all, it is my birthday. And I've been really sick and really brave. then when that isn't immediately satisfied, he was in Antonelli's mirrors. Right, so there's no little excuse of, oh, it was overheating, so he had to get out of the slipstream. He was fully doing intimidating driving on Antonelli, and I wonder if there's a little bit of a needle from that incident in T1 earlier on, because he was driving quite aggressively against his teammate.
I will say, though, that's not a new thing for drivers trying to make a point about why they should be let in front of their teammate. Like, look, I'm all over the back of him. He's holding me up. Yeah. Come on, let me move through. And that is very classic. I don't think we can really.
It's
really
not very papaya rulesy, though, is it? That was,
yeah. My issue with papaya rules is there don't seem to be any.
Papaya rules is more of a vibe, anyway. But yeah, so look, Mercedes should just be saying for the rest, I know they're very nice, they don't like doing this kind of thing, but look, George Russell is the number one this season, okay? And that, if they did that, that would kind of take the pressure off Antonelli as well. And just go, look, when Russell came in with Hamilton, they talked about Russell being in a learning year in his first year. Do the same with Antonelli. Don't say this is the second, incarnation of Senna. Just say, yeah, he's here to learn. Actually, do you know what? We're not even giving him all the same bits. If you want to be top cover for the kids and take the pressure off, just say, yeah, obviously it's a cost cap. We have to prioritize upgrades. They're going to Russell at the moment. He's an iteration behind, so we're not expecting him to be at the same level. There you go. That's good top cover. You're welcome, Toto. You can take that. You can take that from me. All right. Anything else on Russell apart from the fact that it was, all-round solid performance? I think next I want to talk about the wingless wonders. Remember when I said that Williams, they wouldn't go anywhere, would they? Williams, 3 good races at the beginning of the season, then that form was going to plummet to the ground. Well, Chris Stevens is sending me a flurry of WhatsApp messages saying, I told you so, and he did, and he was correct. And Williams have managed to sustain, really, apart from a dip. I'd say they had a little bit of a dip before summer, but now they seem to be consistently putting out good results. And, of course, there was a little bit of fortune with Williams that the timing of their laps during qualifying in Q3 meant they set a time. I think it was only Sainz and Lawson set a time. The top guys didn't get to set a time. And so there is, you get a break. You get a bit of luck in sport. That happens. You then have to capitalize on that. And you had Carlos Sainz and Lawson fighting up at the top in a kind of a preview of what reverse grids might end up looking like. And you can see that if you get cars that have been having good weekends but just not getting the run of qualifying, or not quite being able to put a weekend together, or having to make decisions that you make when you're at the back of the grid, you suddenly put those cars up at the front of the grid, and those teams and those drivers can perform.
I will say it wasn't just luck, though.
I didn't say it was just luck. I didn't say just.
No. I'm building on your point. Sorry. Oh. I agree that it wasn't just luck. Okay. I think I apologize. Sainz, he put in a great performance.
Yeah, Albon put it in a wall.
Yeah, Albon not so much. Let's focus on the good Williams driver today. I think Carlos did an exceptional job. He was measured. He wasn't too aggressive. He knew the limits of his car, held his space. He knew where it was strong. And yeah, it was so nice to see Williams up on the podium, and especially Carlos after the trials and tribulations of being at Williams. I also will say, like, full credit to James Vowles. I think what he's come in and done at Williams has been absolutely a lifeline for the team. The attitude with everyone there, 2 fantastic drivers. He's turned it around completely. And I really think this is where Williams should be.
I think the thing that has caught them out most this season has been the difficulty in overtaking relative to last season. They were not as concerned about qualifying because they've had excellent race pace. And here they show up with a really good race car. It's very solid. They're always there or thereabouts with the points, no matter where they start. But the one thing they can't do is find that last, I would say, half a tenth, but it's not even really that much. It's like, tenth of a hundredth sometimes, 12th to 8th place. And with the qualifying today, even if you take away the luck aspect of the red flag, Sainz was starting 5th or 6th, I think, with that time. Like he legitimately had a serious, good starting top 10 time. And that's the problem they've been trying to solve.
But that's the thing. Williams have actually consistently been having a pretty good car that's pretty competitive. It's like Aston Martin a few seasons ago. You know, there's the sporadic podium. They're not always up there, but they can capitalize with good strategy, with a good driver. You do well. And I think that looking ahead to next season, this actually does mark a real turning point in Williams with the attitude of the drivers, with the belief in the car that actually it can get up on the podium. I love it. There was a tear in my eye. It was a fantastic moment.
It was really cool.
And honestly, I know Russell beat him, but I would still be willing to argue that if they'd started Carlos on the hard tire, I'm not so sure Russell finishes ahead of him.
But I honestly, there's no difference between P2 and P3. Like that P3 already exceeds expectations for what Williams should be able to do. And Carlos Sainz treated it with the reverence and the drama that it deserved. He said, "This is the greatest moment of my life." You know, he goes, I once rescued my baby brother from a river. He would have died if I didn't rescue him, but this moment eclipses that. That I made that up. But you know, he's like, you know, this is better than all my wins. This is better than, okay. Maybe it feels like that now, but you know, at the end of your career interview, let's see if you say that podium after that weird qualifying in Baku in 2025 was the greatest moment of my career. But it sounded lovely in the moment, and it was a correct thing to say, and I think it probably reflects the feelings of that team. And it was a great celebration, apart from the fact that he tried to take a big running leap into the crowd, into his team, and he did all the jump motion, and he went about an inch off the ground. Poor jumping game. Everything else this weekend, nailed it. Could not jump into the crowd. 0 out of 10 crowd surfing ability.
And of course, that is what makes
very
a good
important.
Formula One. No, I actually don't think that Sainz was bigging it up or lying in any way. I bet he probably does feel like it's the best moment. And you see that because of how hard he's had it since leaving Ferrari. Looking back, don't think it was the right decision to drop Sainz at all. I think he's a great driver, and it must be so difficult hopping in from a Ferrari to a Williams. It's let's not pretend that they're in any way equal. But
hang on. Whoa, Williams have got more podiums.
This weekend might shut me up. But seeing how well that they've performed, and also speaking to them as a unit, speaking to him, Albon and James together, I asked them, I said, like, this has been a really big new era in Williams recently. Where do you see the team going? And they mean business. They genuinely know that this is where they can be consistently fighting, and it's just been out of their reach for whatever reason previously this season. And it's finally happened, and it's amazing.
Did you see the rainbow unicorn thing?
Yeah, so and you know what? It was beautiful. A
little girl, when they asked them a question over a video, and they were answering some questions for a social media bit, and they said, just this little girl was randomly like, "Will you wear a unicorn on your race helmet?" And he just went,
"No, yes." She has like a unicorn toy, and she was asking if it should be called Sprinkles or Sparkles.
Sparkles, yeah. I mean, Sparkles is a bog standard name.
And of course, that rainbow dash power helped him on the podium.
I get that reference. I shouldn't have admitted that I do, but yes, I do. But yeah, he put the helmet right on the back of his helmet, the unicorn, and it powered him to victory. Yeah, that is definitely a good story for Williams and for Sainz. I can't help but feel how gutted Albon is looking at that, because presumably he would have been out in that qualifying. He would have gone out behind Sainz. They would have gone out together, wouldn't they? And then he'd be up there as well. A double podium it could have been for Williams.
I like the fact that if you look at it from the 10,000 foot view, they've had exactly the same amount of good and bad luck this season. It's just Albon has always had relatively good luck, and all of Sainz's good luck happened today. Just right now.
Take it.
Take it. But they've both been there, and he keeps on saying it. Albon keeps on saying it. You know, we're knocking on the doors. We're knocking on the doors. We're knocking on the doors. And today, they finally managed to kick one down. And yeah, if I'm Albon, I'm just like, oh, why?
It's always difficult. I don't think it could have been a double podium. It could have been a double podium for Ferrari if they were faster. I think it's a bit of a moot point. But I don't think that there's a negative particularly that Albon can realistically take away from this weekend other than he got quite unlucky. He will be so thrilled, and Williams will be so thrilled just to have that money, those points. It's a great moment. I think if I'm feeling bad for anyone, really, it's the Racing Bulls.
Why?
Because they just slipped down.
Okay, but here you go. I think Matt would argue that the Williams just had a fundamentally better race car than the Racing Bulls. And the Racing Bulls went all out for just low downforce, we're going to be a nuisance. And then that was combined with Lawson also getting the same fortune with the red flag as Sainz got. And I think just, he's in a less good position to take advantage of it. But he was very much none shall pass. So the cars behind, they were chopping off his leg. I think he'd lost all legs and all arms at one point, just a torso and a helmet sitting there going, no, I have less downforce. You shall not pass.
No, I feel bad for them because I feel like this could have been a podium for them too. Everyone could have got a podium if they were better and the car was faster. But I think there are, again, strengths to take away. Lawson did actually do a pretty good drive, but I would be disappointed not to have converted that.
Okay, so people will go, oh, you're just downplaying Lawson's achievement because you don't like Liam Lawson.
Correct.
Yeah, so here's how I'm going to do that. It's my second one of the show. He didn't really have to defend, did he? He was just driving around doing what that V-Carb could do. It wasn't like people were alongside him and he was having to outbrake anyone. Like, what did he do that was particularly out of the ordinary? Cars just could not catch him.
I have nothing to add to that, really. I wasn't particularly impressed by an outstanding performance.
In fact, I'm going to call Lawson's performance a fluke. I'm going to do it. It's a fluke.
Goodness.
Fluked it in qualifying and then fluked that they had the setup there to just keep everyone behind. I don't think he did anything particularly.
No, I agree, but I do feel bad for them that it wasn't a podium. I do.
I will disagree.
Aww.
I think he actually drove. I know everyone's like, "Oh, we thought we could move on from this topic," and I've just thrown the anchor out the boat.
We're used to it.
I know. No, he had a really interesting post-race interview, and he talked about having like the pass. I think Tsunoda passed him at the beginning, and he talked about being completely out of energy halfway down the straight. And in the course of this race, getting better and understanding how to manage the energy across the lap so that people could not pass him down that straight. So like, it's not just that he showed up and drove the car around. He's beginning to learn more about the more subtle aspects of how to drive these cars and manage this energy. And I looked at Hadjar's pace, and broadly speaking, they had similar pace, which is saying that, they're both were driving on about the same level today. So hats off. Unlike certain other people, he didn't drive into a wall.
Yep.
He didn't make any mistakes. And when he was challenged, he didn't just drive into people, which occasionally he's done in the past.
Damn. So I've got to put Lawson in the same bracket as Verstappen when I said like some drivers knew how to drive it without sticking it in the wall. So maybe Lawson did go out there and go, these conditions require going out early to avoid the melee and the safety car. Yeah, don't get greedy on the track evolution like Alpine did. Alpine got greedy on the track evolution and it bit them. I think it ended up taking out both their cars really. And then there's definitely time to talk about Alpine. But maybe the drivers who went out there and said, let's play it safe, let's get their lap in, there is a bit of a reward for that. So when we call it luck, part of the factor was if we go out now and there's a red flag, we get our time.
Yeah, I agree with the luck sentiment, but I think that's completely true. We know that Baku can get crazy. The teams know that. It is very basic strategy at Baku to get a banker lap in, knowing that there will probably be someone in the wall in 2 minutes' time. Now, I don't think anyone was expecting 6 red flags, mind you.
Was it 6 only? I thought it was like 7.
No, 6. And Piastri did make that record breaking with his rather fantastic incident. But no, I don't think that's a valid thing to say. I think, as a team, it's up to you to understand the demands of the circuit, understand the history of what's happened before, and mediate those risks by communicating with your driver.
And I think that takes us on to, we're not going to dwell on it, I promise. We're going to make this as short and sharp and as painless as possible. We're going to rip the plaster off and talk about Ferrari. Ferrari have had a disaster this weekend. I would go as far as to say that I am sure for them it is an embarrassing weekend. A weekend where they turned up with a car that had enough performance to show really well in FP1, FP2, have the drivers buzzing, have Lewis Hamilton, your new $450 million signing, 7-time world champion, talking about getting a pole position, and you ended up with the drivers squabbling over who would not get 8th place. This was Ferrari's worst weekend in a long time, and the bar is high for that.
I will immediately disagree. I bet if you went to Hamilton before the start of the weekend and said, if you finish on Norris gearbox, would you be happy with your weekend? And he would have absolutely said yes.
Yeah, I've assumed that was for P1.
I think if we actually listen to what Lewis said at the start of the weekend, they thought they would be fighting for pole position, for a podium. Yeah. They genuinely, in all of the setting up, thought that they had a great car here. I think by any standards, this was not a good result for them. No matter what benchmark you use, they all thought they could have done better. So I don't know what was lost in translation between their talks at the start of the weekend versus how the race actually went. But it was not good. Not good.
Obviously, they had an appalling qualifying. And you can go and listen to my qualifying review and skip to the Ferrari bit there. So I've covered that in some detail. I still want to know what these guys think. Obviously, I try to reduce the overlap between those shows, but normally nothing really interesting happens in qualifying that would warrant this kind of main conversation here as well. But the Q2 thing for Lewis Hamilton was key, where I think a series of just ridiculous errors, keeping him out for 3 hot laps, expecting that somehow he would be able to get out of P12 with that. That's ridiculous. And then obviously the fact that Leclerc had loads of offs and then went out early in Q3 wasted the potential that they had. But I think there's some more interesting nuance to that as well, Matt, because I think they were forced into making changes between P2 and P3.
Yeah, and this is what we saw. I think he ran more downforce on the Friday, and then he had the skinnier wing on the Saturday. It's a little bit lost to me. I had a busy Saturday, non-Formula One wise, but that's what I recall. And this would be, again, nobody really understood how important or how critical this DRS zone length was going to be. But if you qualified in front and, you ask in the notes why Sainz was able to hang on the way he did, well, Max gave him about 10 seconds. So he drove in clean air. So he was able to maximize his medium tire pace. And if Hamilton had been there, it would have been exactly the same kind of result. But instead, they were stuck in traffic. And you can see his radio message at the end. He's like, the car just has no rear. And they couldn't capitalize on everything else about their car that was good because of that one specific reason.
Yeah, I mean, as we said at the start of the weekend, in our preview show, it's really important to keep those tyre temperatures down at Baku because they just will not be responsive under braking, as a lot of the drivers learned in qualifying. But I run out of sympathy for Ferrari, and I say this as a Ferrari fan. Time after time, they make the worst possible decision on strategy. It's like, those games you can play where you can choose what your character does, but the good decision costs gems. And Ferrari have run out of gems. It's like in every scenario, they misread the situation, fail to learn from prior mistakes, and it's painful.
I think the problem is all they do is learn from prior mistakes. They're like, what did he complain about last time? Okay, let's give him the other thing without considering that the things at this track might be different than they were at the last track. And, I get that it's probably hard with Lewis, who's got so much experience and wealth and knows, probably knows exactly what he wants. You want to try and give him that. But then you look at the times, you look at Leclerc and, you want to do well in qualifying, then we need to give you a skinny rear wing. But that means in this situation, actually, you don't do as good in qualifying because they're still looking at what happened in Monza, where they gave him more downforce and he wasn't fast. It's just like this constant, they're looking in their rear view mirror instead of looking out the windshield. And that's a problem.
I completely agree, because they're not moving forward at all. And that's the result of just not knowing the situation that they're actually in. They fall back in a race, they have a bad result, and they're so focused on what went wrong that they completely make no ground moving forward and actually developing the future car. It's like the opposite of what Haas did a few seasons ago. They went, right, scrap it, we're going to focus on next season. Ferrari never seemed to have that mentality of, right, that was a horrible race. How are we preparing for the next one? What setup are we having? And every other team does it. Every other team does it. You want a certain setup in qualifying and a certain setup in the race. It's not possible to have both at once, so you split the difference in some way and you make it work. It's not a difficult demand to give the teams to do their job.
I'm going to take a punt at how the Ferrari strategy team works, and all my knowledge is based on sports movies. So in the sports movie, there's always like this moment, the critical moment where the decision has to be made and someone has a moment of inspiration or a flashback, and it's all just on vibes and on passion, and then they win, which means that's the correct way to do it. I think what Ferrari does is it has almost a checklist of things to do, like a flow chart. If this happens, stick to plan A. If this situation goes wrong, if the tyres are doing this, then go to plan B. And they have it in their heads that this is the way that it's going to go. And they think they can just war game the entire race weekend based on these scenarios. And I think it feels like that's very, very rigid. And they have got a mockingness from the, we're on plan C now, we're on plan D, we're on plan Z. And a great example of that is not using that medium tyre in Q2, because the plan was that you've got the medium, which is the better qualifying tyre. You've got your new medium, so that's worth, X amount of tenths. And when Lewis was in big, big trouble because he couldn't do his new tyre run due to Leclerc going off, and then you could see on the second one that it wasn't happening either. Like you could see in the first two sectors. It's not happening. Bring him in. Put the mediums on. And they said, no, looking at the checklist, no, mediums take too long to warm up. But they're not going to be worse than soft tyres that have already done 2 runs. They're too rigid and it's just not working.
But that's because when they do make the reactive calls and they respond to something that's happening in the race, they still do an absolutely horrible job. We've seen what Ferrari are like when they're reactive. They're not good. They're not sharp enough. They make the wrong call. They'll bring 2 drivers in at the same blimming time.
Monaco.
It's literally happened time and time again. And I completely agree. They'll go into a race weekend with about 7 different strategies. And if you're not responding to the unique demands of the weekend, like we saw here, we knew coming into this weekend that the tyres would be behaving differently than last year. We knew that. So you can't bring last year's knowledge in, hope it's still relevant and go, yeah, but this would have worked last time if everything went exactly how we thought it would. That's not how racing works. And I get very frustrated about this because no other team makes this many horrible decisions.
I just find myself wondering why they keep on putting Leclerc out ahead of Hamilton when Leclerc is always the one much more likely to crash and ruin somebody's lap. Not that it's a bad thing for him because he's also faster, but why, and especially at a track like Baku where you've already seen a bunch of red flags, why wouldn't you say, let's just send Lewis out first because, he's more likely to get to the finish line?
Yeah, but I think, to be honest, Leclerc's been the form driver. So if I've actually seen it the other way around, where Leclerc fans have been going, "Oh, why is it always Leclerc giving Hamilton the toe?" But I actually think they've just been going, "Well, look, Leclerc's our form guy. Hamilton's still getting used to everything," and I think that they probably correctly just bias that attention to Leclerc. The really worrying thing, if you listen to the team radio in Q2, aside from the fact that he's begging for new tyres, is that he's crying out for help and saying, "I can't get these tyres into the window. The rears aren't working. Can you please tell me something?" And when it was Sainz saying, "We are checking," and then they don't get back to him and he's having to say, "Stop inventing," that was hilarious because I don't care all that much about Carlos Sainz really in the big picture of things. But now that it's Lewis Hamilton, it's horrible and I hate it and I can't stand it. And why has nothing been done before?
And I don't understand this. I think we can all pretty much agree. None of us can understand why this is happening so often and so badly. But they're not responding in any way to what the drivers are saying, whatever, but they're also not being executive in decision making. They're not listening to their drivers' feedback. And when they do, they go, oh, okay, yeah, no, come in then. And then they don't know what they're doing with him. It completely is messed up. You either don't listen to the drivers at all and say, no, we're the team, we know better, this is the strategy. But it doesn't work like that at Ferrari because they don't trust the team to make the right decisions. Leclerc's screaming from the cockpit, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Because they have no trust that the team will do the right thing. And that fundamental imbalance does not work.
But I think the team doesn't trust the team. That's what we're talking about here. In other words, your flowchart comment is exactly right. There is a rigid structure in place and no one trusts anyone to ever deviate it. You talk about the tire thing. James Vowles after qualifying was like, oh yeah, this has been our struggle. We have like an 11-point, we've worked out over the 3 practices, an 11-point method because we've really been struggling getting our tires up to temperature. They correctly identified that having the tire in the window is worth more than like even having the best setup when it comes to qualifying.
Yeah.
And in the past we've seen, like, why didn't you go 2 slow laps and a fast lap then? Why don't you just say, okay, if this warm up isn't working, what other options do we have available? Now we have a flow chart. And the next step in the flow chart after you complain about your rear tires is we just send you back out there anyway.
I will say what I thought was absolutely hilarious on the Sky Sports footage. They now have Bernie Collins as a strategist actually on the pit wall, analysing all of the data.
That's pretty cool.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it cracked me up that she was giving better suggestions with no attachment to any of the teams than what Ferrari were actually doing. She literally on the air said, right, this is what I would do now. With 17 minutes left, you have the time for 3 hot laps. You would do push, cool, push. And she completely laid it out. I was like, well, listen to her. It's just not difficult. They have whole jobs for strategists, many of whom are excellent. And it was just funny watching it on the TV footage play out, going, well, yeah, listen to her. She's got it.
Oh, man, we should do like a watch along of like, you are the strategist and lay out our calls and see if they would have been better. No, in fact, no, I don't want to be exposed. I want to do all of my strategy after the fact with hindsight. That's a lot
This
easier.
is the I'm asking the trivia questions now maneuver.
Oh yeah, I'm the quiz master now. Yeah. Yeah, it's essential. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to take part in the quiz and have my lack of F1 knowledge exposed, but no. I do want to put some of the blame on Lewis Hamilton. Do you remember the initial reaction in February of last year when the announcement was made, when we did a special show? And I think my first comments was something along the lines of, oh no, Lewis, why? You fool. And then I calmed down and then I built up some false hope. But at the time, my reaction was, all the stuff that's going on with Ferrari right now, Lewis is going to be the one suffering from all of that. And it's true. My initial reaction was absolutely correct. And now, the worst of all is that we're all emotionally invested because of Lewis Hamilton, those of us that are Lewis Hamilton fans. So, Lewis, I know you're listening, probably, maybe, definitely not. But this is your fault. You did this to us.
I think everybody could have called it, but the iconicness of the move is what cemented it in history.
Yeah,
and, I'll keep this short because it's not really related to the race.
It doesn't matter.
But I think Lewis has absolutely no right to be upset and surprised and horrified.
Yes.
Because we've all been screaming at our TV for years. And I would love to have been in the room where it happened because I want to know what they promised him.
Yeah.
I want to know what people they brought in, what changes they made to actually say and convince him that this season would be different. And we've said it a million times, you can gut Ferrari from the inside out. And they have done that over the past few seasons. They've pretty much replaced every employee. And still something's not happening. And I'm telling you, it is the culture. We've got some really interesting stuff in the chat of people saying that there's research showing that teams with huge passionate fan bases need to try or don't try as hard because they know that they'll have the funding, the fan base, etc. in any event, which is true because Ferrari fans are still out there. They just cry every weekend.
It's the old, it's a Ferrari. You know, when Niki Lauda in the Rush movie is saying, "Hey, this is a not very good car," and they're like, "You can't say that. It's a Ferrari." And look, you know, they were speaking to Vasseur, and Vasseur was saying, "No, there was no problem with it. He just couldn't get the tires into the window." They go, "You know, we can all see. You know, we can all hear. We're all like tracking this. This is a huge sport with a fairly informed fan base. I know we're not strategists on the pit wall, but you cannot tell me that Hamilton not qualifying out of Q2 was down to just not getting those tyres into the right window. If nothing else, please treat us with just a little bit of respect is too much, but just treat us with a little bit of like, we've watched F1 for quite a while and we know what happened there. You made a terrible call against the advice of your driver."
Yeah, but he's not wrong. But the problem is the team is responsible for him getting that tire into the window. They have failed.
Yeah, he was asking
changed
for
the
advice.
downforce level. They did not work up an adequate plan. And when it should have been obvious in the first qualifying session that they were struggling with it, because they can see those temperatures, they can see what's going on. They should have been on it, trying to find another way around. And that's the difference. Oh, well, you know, no, you got to figure out how to get those. No. You're the engineer. You need to be giving him some advice about his brand new car and how it works best.
This is the thing. You need a team to guide you, but it's the blind leading the blind.
Just like our awards segment. Here at Missed Apex, we like to give out awards because we are know-it-all sofa fans, and we are definitely better than any Ferrari strategist. We probably would have done better in that qualifying session as long as they slowed the cars right down. Because if doing well in qualifying was driving slower, I think I might have a chance. If they were in much less powerful cars and less difficult to drive, and I was younger and I'd been practicing loads. But we still take all of our unearned authority with great confidence as we Dunning-Kruger the awards at the end of the show. So we'll start on a negative. We'll start on the Missed Apex Award.
Oh no, you missed the Apex.
So, Antonia Rankin. All the links to follow you will be in the show notes below. People should follow you, and they will, because you've been impressive and fun and informative on the show. So they're going to look in the description on YouTube or scroll up in their podcast app and click to follow your YouTube and not YouTube, TikTok and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Go and follow Antonia Rankin there. Who missed the Apex for you?
Oh my gosh, so many people.
Yeah, I've got a long list.
I'm actually just going to say McLaren. I think in almost every front, they'd had a horrible weekend. I think they didn't bring a great car again, and I think that was masked by all of the other issues that there were. And I think they have a lot to learn if they do want to take this championship home, because they are nowhere near as clean as they should be.
You mean the Drivers' Championship? They're going to pick up the Constructors.
Yeah, of course.
And
but even with the Constructors, I think it's been a bit too jammy recently.
Man, just think how many like boxes of shirts and like special hats they had ready today. And then someone had to load them all back onto the truck. And now they've got to be taken to Singapore. The carbon footprint of McLaren's failure in championship shirts being transported to Singapore alone is disastrous. Matt, who missed the Apex for you?
Sadly, it's got to be Alex Albon, although he did hit the Colapinto in his defense.
Oh,
wait,
wow.
That's not better, is it?
No,
that's not better.
He did have a rough weekend. By the way, Matt, people should follow you at MattPT55 on Blue Sky.
Blue Sky, yep. Pretty much all your socials, you can find me that way. And yeah, I'm out and about New York playing every now and then. So pay attention and maybe you get to see me or just come have a drink or whatever. All good.
But yeah, Albon, obviously he had that crash and he had fair play in that interview. He just went, yep, I made a silly rookie error. And it's the kind of error you and me would make, where you went,
all the time.
The grip level changed massively. It's a completely different racetrack. Oh, he must be so gutted though, watching Sainz go and collect that podium and say, well, it's not his day. He's done the hard work this year. He's been the better driver this year. But with the Colapinto thing, I think like Colapinto was holding up that DRS train for so long. And when he did his stop and saw Colapinto reappear, he must have just gone, this turnip again. I'm just sending it. Screw it. I'm sending it.
Yeah, it didn't seem like his head was fully in the game at that moment, because it was just like, you just looked at it, you're like, why? Why is that wheel there? I didn't understand it.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer for the stewards. So I've got a bit of a list here. I'll quickly say, hi, I'm Richard Reddy. Find me Spanners Ready on Instagram and on X. If you're still on X, I'm Spanners Ready there, and on Blue Sky. And the Missed Apex channels are back up and running, posting clips and me pointing the camera to my face and saying what I reckon. So Instagram, Missed Apex F1, TikTok, Missed Apex F1 as well, and Twitter, Missed Apex F1 there. Consider supporting us in the Patreon community. Even since our sprint show, we've had like 20 new patrons. I cannot believe that people are responding in this amount of numbers. It's $5 a month. We're keeping it at $5 a month. We have done for years because it's the more the merrier. Join in our community. It was a great place to hang out for the F1 race today. It was a really busy kind of chat. The least toxic place to chat about F1 until Matt gets involved. And Ocon has an incident. But before that, it's the least toxic place to talk about F1 anywhere on the internet. Patreon.com/Missed Apex. For me, the Missed Apex award, I think really it should go to Piastri, but we've talked about Piastri quite a lot today. So I think Alpine losing both their drivers in that qualifying session. And actually, the specific thing I want to give it to Alpine for is just Briatore's reaction to Colapinto going out. And I'm giving Colapinto some grace. I know he crashes. I know he's had his incidents. But I think this one, when you see your teammate out in the runoff area, there's a really weird, ambiguous light. Just some kind of light, and then a car ahead of you in the runoff. That's pretty distracting. I think that takes some of the responsibility off him. But Briatore, if you roll back and look at his reaction, he all but like drew a finger across his neck. He was making these gestures like, look at that. This completely justifies the decision I'd already made about Paul Aron, is basically what I read from that. So, yeah, I think Alpine in general, because it's just nice to give them the Missed Apex award. I had Alpine on my list as well. All the people that crashed. So you have to go back and realize, even Hulkenberg stuck it, into turn 4 as well. The Ferrari strategy team. This definitely was a Missed Apex heavy weekend. We can do the good one, though. We can be positive as we talk about our thing of the weekend. Please don't steal the one I want. Please don't steal the one I want. Antonia, who hit the apex for you?
I mean, most drivers hit the apex.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that does not work. That does not work this weekend. Okay, let's go back to who gets your good thing award.
My thing of the weekend, it has to be Williams. I love that team so much. I've spent a lot of time with them. They're a great group of people.
I've spent a lot of time with them.
No,
Have you spent a lot of time with them?
Have you seen the hedge outside their HQ that's trimmed to look like an F1 car? Have you not?
No.
Oh, no, they post about it. Like it's anyway. They're a really great bunch who have been working so incredibly hard, making big changes that have actually made a difference. And Carlos Sainz is just the cherry on top.
Why are they so nice? Is that a Vowles thing, or were they nice anyway?
There's a great culture of work. From what I mean, I don't work there. There might be people who work there that are miserable, but from what I can see, like, it's a really positive and lovely environment, genuinely, and people work so hard in every F1 team. But the energy and the hope and the optimism that Vowles has brought and the skills that he's lent, I really can't compliment them enough.
If you work at Williams and you want to confirm that, just get in touch. Like, I am a good person to leak info to. I'm really subtle.
Or me.
No. Matt will be like, oh, Steve from Williams says, no, we use this brake balance. Like, Matt's terrible. Get in touch with me. Spanners@missedapex.net or on my social media. Incredibly discreet. Like, I've never outed a source, ever, and I won't. So, yeah, do tell us. Tell us stuff. It's fun when people from the shop floor tell us stuff. So, yeah, Williams, are they as nice as they seem? Because they really do seem nice and supporting and caring. Yeah, it upsets me, Someone needs to be the bully there. It's like my son has really supportive friends, kind teachers, a lovely mother, a friendly sister who's like a great friend in his life, and no one bullies him. So I have to. I bully him because I have to. I'm being kind and loving. Matt, who hit the apex for you?
This is kind of a difficult one because I was going to go, obviously, with Sainz. We share a number, 55. You got to love him putting that little sticker on his helmet.
Love that.
But I think I'm going to have to go with the Paddock Cat.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Fantastic.
Paddock Cat was great. Yeah.
Sorry, I think the one that I remember, I don't remember which team it was, but it was a here are all the reasons we should adopt this cat. And the first slide was, here are the reasons. The second slide was a picture of the cat with a look at this. And the third was finished. And just like they gave him a little pass and everything. Oh, everyone had so much fun with it. So yeah, thank you, Paddock.
I bet it was V-Carb. They have the best social media. Yeah. But Carlos Sainz is sat at home now listening to this and he's going, oh, I got on the podium. I fought through all the things. And the Paddock cat is the one that gets the award. So yeah, we should go to Sainz, really.
I kind of felt like Antonia stole it with her Williams thing, but you know.
Fair enough.
But Sainz if it's not the Paddock cat.
Have I done one? No. So I get to do a good thing award. I think I'm going to stick with George Russell. So yeah, I do think these are George Russell conditions, and I think I'm fairly critical when they're not George Russell conditions. But if you can pull off a performance like that, where before the race, I think just about everyone was saying, yeah, of course, Max is going to go and run away with it. You come from 5th place to go to the maximum you can do, 2nd place, while being as dog rough ill as that and being clinical. And that move past Tsunoda as well was critical. And it wasn't just a dive bomb down the inside, manipulated and moved Tsunoda around, made Tsunoda compromise his exit out of turn 3. I think that is probably a career performance for George Russell. And if I had to give a 2nd place, of course, I would give it to Max for his Saturday performance too. Good. Well, we have got a little bit of a break. I think it's 2 weeks until Singapore. So we will have news shows. I was speaking to Joe Sayward. So I think I will be speaking to Joe midweek when he gets back from Azerbaijan. We'll have a preview show for the Singapore Grand Prix as well. And of course, our race review show there. And I think I'm going to stick with doing the qualifying shows. But don't worry if you think it's too much, they're skippable. Like Alex says, they're non-canon because there's no one there to argue with me, and I'm just monologuing what I thought about the qualifying session. So honestly, never feel like you have to consume every moment of Missed Apex podcast, apart from Sundays. Race reviews are the most important. News shows after that. But until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex podcast. And thank God we missed the Apex. Unlike Hulkenberg, Albon, Piastri, Leclerc. This is like an in memoriam, isn't it, of all the people who crashed out over the weekend.